Welcome to Mallet and Michelle on Dripping Springs, hosted by me, Michelle Lewis, and Steve Mallet. And today our guest is Leslie Rhode.
Yeah, I can't wait. She's a 20-plus year broadcast journalist, spent most of her career at KXAN.
I have a feeling I'm going to learn a lot from her.
I'm actually a little intimidated.
I'm very nervous.
Yeah.
I'm very nervous.
We're part of the media, sort of.
Are we really?
Yeah.
We're not just yucking around over here with two
actually,
microphones?
Mostly that's what we're doing, just yucking around. Michelle Lewis, you've heard the name Waterloo.
I have.
Do you know why that's important?
Isn't that the original name of Austin?
Oh, you knew that. I didn't
did.
think you knew that.
Of course I know everything. If I don't, I'll make it up.
Yeah, okay. It was the name of the city of Austin until 1839. Then it was named after Stephen F. Austin. And the population of then Waterloo, soon to become Austin, was 856 people.
That's how many people were in Austin?
At the time, in 1839, there were 856 people living in Austin.
Wonder where all the other people were hiding. Maybe they could only count to 900.
I bet you at that. I wonder what the population of the entire United States was in 1839. There might be more people in Austin now than there were.
I don't know. There was 836 people at HEB the other day. So.
That's exactly right. You ever heard of the Battle of Gonzales?
Of course.
Yeah. Do you know where Gonzales is?
It's over by San Antonio, I think.
It's east of San Antonio, between San Antonio and Houston. It's not really on the way from here. But
didn't you ever take Texas history?
I didn't have to take Texas history.
You should have to take Texas history if you have Texas on your driver's license.
Maybe we should do that with all the people coming here from California. I don't care if you're 55 years old. You got to take Texas history.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the Battle of Gonzales?
So you know about the flag that came out of that.
The come and take
it flag, which was a white flag with a cannon on it and a Texas star and the words "come and take it."
Uh-huh.
The story behind that, in Gonzales, there was a bunch of colonists there, and they were having trouble with hostile Indians, and they asked the military, the contingent that was stationed in Bear, not Bexar,
Bear. Not Bexar. Oh, you said it right.
Yeah, see,
good job.
They asked them for a cannon to help, protect themselves against the Indians. And the Mexican military there said, "We'll give you a cannon, but you have to give it back when we ask for it."
Okay.
Yeah, I know. So the Mexican military delivered this 6-pound caliber cannon.
What's a 6-pound? What does that mean?
That's a pretty good size cannon.
What does it mean, 6-pound
so
caliber?
The ball that goes in the end of the cannon.
Oh, the pew-pew part?
Yeah, the pew-pew part. What comes out of that is 6 pounds, which that's a pretty good size cannon.
Okay.
So I don't know the exact dimensions, but I would think that cannon is 5-6 feet long. And so in 1835, when the colonists started battling with the Mexican military over who was going to control Texas, the Mexican military asked for the cannon back.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
So they buried it in Gonzales so that when the military came, they couldn't find it. And that battle escalated, or that confrontation escalated into the Battle of Gonzales, which was the first battle of the Texas Revolution.
Oh, see.
Yeah. So this cannon was actually ended up eventually in the Alamo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did you know that?
I know that's probably where I've seen it before, because I've been to the Alamo.
So no, you didn't. You didn't, because that cannon no longer exists.
So there's some sort of replica right outside in the gardens or something.
There were 21 cannons buried under the Alamo that were all dug up.
Yeah, there's some big canyon that is out in the. I just assumed, because you said that, I just assumed that was the one, but maybe not.
Canyon or cannon?
Canyon.
It's a canyon in front of the Alamo. Wow, downtown San Antonio. No, there was actually 2 cannons eventually involved in the Battle of Gonzales. So there was the 6-pound cannon and there was a smaller 1-pound cannon, and both of them were buried in the Alamo. The 1-pound cannon ended up in the Gonzales Memorial Museum in Gonzales. Mm-hmm. The 6-pound cannon was actually given to one of the widows from somebody that died in the Alamo. She sent it to New York in 1874 to be recast into a bell that is now hanging in the St. Mark's Episcopal Church in downtown San Antonio.
No, that's a cool story.
Isn't that great?
That is a cool story. Well, now I'm curious as to what cannon is in the Alamo. That's right outside.
I think
in the gardens.
I don't know the history behind that one cannon, but I'm sure it was used in the Battle of the Alamo. I love Texas history, don't you?
I do too.
There's so much cool stuff that happened here in the state.
Yeah, there's some really cool history buffs out there. I mean, the Daughters of the Revolution, they have a lot of information as well. But I mean, how many times have you been to the Alamo?
About 3 times.
3 times?
Yeah. How many times have you been there?
I lost count. Oh, okay, here goes. The iconic 16-pound cannon from the Battle of the Alamo is on display outside of the Long Barrack. The cannon was disabled and buried by the Mexican army after the battle. Years later, it was discovered by the Maverick family and later given to the Alamo.
Oh, so there you go. So that's a huge cannon, 16 pounds.
I knew there was a cannon out there.
So that's not the same cannon as the Gonzales cannon with the come and take it flag.
Well, there you go. So, Steve, you helped me learn something about myself. And either I'm an overthinker or I'm a no thinker.
I'll go along with that.
Yeah. I
You either wing it or you overanalyze it to death.
Yeah, and I lose sleep and I have to take Benadryl.
That is exactly true.
Okay, so I don't know if this falls under the overthinking or the underthinking or no thinking category, but have you ever heard of Mike the Headless Chicken?
What?
So Annie's dad, Gary, is in town. Annie, our producer. Her dad is in town, Gary, from Minnesota. And he asked me if I knew about Mike the Headless Chicken, and I didn't. And he told me the story, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect because Steve is a chicken daddy.
We are a chicken family.
You're a chicken family. So on September 10th in 1945, a strapping young rooster, but tender, he was also tender, was pecking through the dust of Frutia, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Frutia, Colorado. Yeah. And so this farmer's wife told him to go pick this bird, and they wanted to have it for dinner because his mother-in-law was coming over for dinner. So he went and picked out the biggest, juiciest, plumpest chicken.
Okay.
So he chopped his head off, right? Chopped his head off. And
I hope Holly's not listening.
The chicken survived.
Get out of here.
Yes, the chicken survived. For 18 months, the chicken survived. Doctors said that it was because it missed the jugular vein and a clot prevented it from bleeding to death. But because of this, Mike the Headless Chicken was tromped all around Colorado, and people would pay 25 cents to see Mike the Chicken, right?
Mike the Headless Chicken.
Mike the Headless Chicken. I mean, it goes
that had to be some kind of weird carnival thing that wasn't right.
Oh, but wait, it gets better. Because there is a Mike the Headless Chicken Festival that I think you and Holly should go to in Colorado. Every year around June, they have Headless Chicken. There's a 5K. There's like a disc golf thing. There's vendors and food and probably chicken fried steak.
Get out of here.
But I thought it was pretty funny, Mike the Headless Chicken. Can you imagine it? Because they say that they have little brains.
They do have little brains. They're funny though, and they have personalities. But when I was a kid, when we lived in Spain, we moved out onto this farm, and the house that we moved into had like 6 old nasty chickens in the backyard. And the landlord, when we moved in, my dad said, well, what do you want us to do with the chickens? And he said, I don't know. You can eat them. He said, I don't care. They're yours. You take care of them. So my dad decided to slaughter them.
Chicken killer.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, Holly, don't listen. He took the chickens and he put them on a log out in the backyard, and he had a hatchet and he chopped their heads off. And it was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life, because those chickens run around in the backyard for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, my grandmother told me growing up in Grand Saline in East Texas that it was her job to go catch the chickens, and she would just grab the chicken by the head and she would wind it up.
Yep. And
you'd wind it up and either pop the head off or it would stun it so much, and then they would chop the head off. But then, like, I guess they're not. I mean, it was survival, right? Like I'm not out like killing my own chicken nuggets and dipping it in Chick-fil-A sauce, right? I'm going through a drive-through and people are doing that for me. Somewhere, somehow, the chicken that boring chicken sandwich that you eat every single day of your life, almost.
I know.
That was once Mike the Headless Chicken. It was once Mike the Head Chicken.
Oh, God. Yeah, I know. They all have to be slaughtered somehow, unfortunately. That's one of the reasons Holly is a vegetarian. And speaking of chicken family, since Holly and I are, do you know the 20 best cities. I'm not going to tell you all 20 best U.S. cities for families with children in the U.S.
I'm going to say somewhere in Texas is Dripping Springs, number one.
No.
Dripping Springs.
Dripping's not on here. The number one, actually, I'll tell you a couple. I'll start at number 3. Number 4, Boise, Idaho. So
Potatoes, boring.
Yeah. This was a story done by StorageCafe.com about the 20 best U.S. cities for families with children. And so Boise, Idaho was number 4. They used
what were the metrics
public
they used?
School safety, socioeconomic factors, home prices, rent, income, and childcare costs.
Okay. Well,
and to a lesser degree, storage unit fees, which I don't know what that's about.
Oh, we got plenty of storage units out here.
Yeah, we do. Number 4, Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
Number 3, Lincoln, Nebraska.
God, these are boring cities.
I know. Number 2, Virginia Beach.
Oh, why Virginia Beach? I've been there.
I lived there. I lived there when I was younger. I don't
nasty.
remember much about it. Plano, Texas.
Plano. That's expensive out there in Plano.
Plano, the average home price in Plano is $553,000. That's what it is. That's what it says.
That's expensive. You know, Plano, Texas, if I remember correctly, I want to say it was back in the 90s or the early 2000s, the late 1900s or the early 2000s. Plano, Texas had the high school. They were having some big drug issues out there. And I remember watching it on 2020 or something like that. But
I mean, not only poor cities have problems with drugs.
Well, yeah, the more expensive the town, the more expensive the drugs, right?
Yeah, that's true. We, at some point in the future, we're going to do a podcast and talk about fentanyl because
we definitely need to. This is especially with Halloween that just passed, and I mean, come on, your random neighbor isn't handing out fentanyl, but these kids
they could be doing it without knowing it. That's the thing. It could be in candy. You know, some of these candies that look like they're sweet tarts or something, some of those could have fentanyl in them.
Yeah, so that's, you know what? There's another reason why you turn all your lights off and you hide in the back.
like we all do. Yeah, so Austin on this list was number 9.
Oh, okay, well, I can see it.
You were saying Plano was expensive. Yeah. The average home price in Austin now is $642,000. So Plano's cheaper than
How big is Plano, Texas now? Do you know?
Why don't you look it up?
I don't have my glasses. Population is...
You're blind.
I am. It's, it says 288,000 and some change.
That's not very big.
No, what did they say the other day? What Austin or Dripping's population?
It's 2.4 million now.
No, Dripping.
Oh, Dripping, 40 something thousand, including the city limits and the ETJ. Yeah.
Wow.
So also on this list in Texas is El Paso, and the average home price in El Paso now, $200,000.
Who the hell wants to live in El Paso?
Right, $200,000, you can get a real house.
And you have the Mexican cartel that's coming back. Yeah. You want to talk about come and take it?
That's number 12. I mean, it beat out Madison, Wisconsin, beat out Scottsdale, Arizona.
I'm going to say that.
You know what else is on here though? I'm starting to get a little. Lubbock is number 10.
Wait, sorry, that sounded really.
But anyway, those are if you're raising a family, that's the place to look. Those are some of the places to look.
Yeah, well,
we've just had an election, and there were some bonds passed and government spending. I heard this little story the other day, and I started looking into this. The Community First is expanding that village out there in East Texas to help with homelessness. And they just got approval to add 1,400 homes. So they're going to have a total of 1,900 homes, which this is a KView story. And it says village will have a total of 1,900 homes across 178 acres and will be able to house more than 350 formerly homeless people. I'm like, if you got 1,900 homes, why... I guess, are they selling the rest of them? Anyway, I don't know.
That's the Mobile Loaves and Fishes guy that started that.
That's right. So
East Texas, why does it say why they mentioned East Texas? I mean, is there, you said East Texas, or did you say East Austin?
Oh, did I say East Texas?
Yeah.
I meant East Austin.
I'm
sorry.
Okay.
Boy, you lost me there for a minute. Sorry, folks. East Austin. It's out at the corner of Hogeye Road and Burleson Road. But we talked about this a couple weeks ago. the budget for the homelessness problem in Austin for 2023 is $67 million. Mayor Adler recently said, on the Joe Rogan podcast, he said 2,000 homeless people in Austin. I read some news stories that they're saying it's closer to 3. 3,000
Did Joe Rogan pull his BS flag up when he said that?
I think he questioned on it pretty hard. It was a few months ago. So they're at $67 million. They're also going to get 11.4 additional $1 million from federal funds that were allotted during that last big spending spree that Congress had. That's a total, almost $78 million, $78.4 million. If you take 3,000, which I think is high, that's $26,133 per person for every person that's homeless in Austin. Now tell me that this huge amount of money we're spending on homelessness is not some kind of a scam. There's just no way that we can't fix this problem with $26,000 per person.
Well, I was reading the definition of chronic homelessness according to the Mobile Loaves and Fishes website, and it says living in a place not meant for human habitation, a safe haven or an emergency shelter for at least 1 year, or 4 episodes within the past 3 years, and having at least one disability. So you have to have a disability as well. Residing in an institutional care facility, including a jail or substance abuse or mental abuse treatment facility, hospital.
That's considered homeless?
Definition of chronic homelessness.
Chronic.
Or other similar facility fewer than 90 days if all the criteria in paragraph A, which is the first one above, are met before entering that facility. And 3, which I found this was very interesting, couch surfing does not count towards your homeless history. So I guess if you're popping from friends to friend, I think that we do have a real homeless situation.
We do have a homeless situation.
But I agree with you. I think that there needs to be more programs in place. And, my heart goes out to the single moms with kids, victims of domestic violence that have been thrown out and can't afford places. But I honestly don't know if Austin is the best place for them to start this, because it's giving a hand out, not a hand up.
Well, without a doubt.
And if we are one of the most expensive places in the United States to live.
Well, it doesn't cost you anything to pitch your tent on Town Lake, though.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And the weather's pretty good here, 10 months of the year, the weather's pretty good. You can sleep in a tent just fine, and probably worse in the summer. But
honestly, I don't know what the answer is. My heart does go out to people that are in those situations. I agree that they haven't put themselves in those situations, but I think also more than that, we have a real drug and alcohol and mental health issue. And like our guest that we had on a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Elaine Brown.
Yeah,
I think that we really need to figure out the mental health in this.
Well,
city.
with $26,000, that's a hell of a lot of counseling you can give somebody to help them get back. You could do therapy. You can give them occupational help where they could, get some clothes, get dressed, put them in temporary housing for a while. There are a lot of people making a lot of money off this homelessness issue that are not doing anything to fix it. And that's the big issue. We're pouring a ton of money down the toilet saying we're trying to help people, and they're not helping them. The issue's not getting any better.
I would like to know the aftercare. I would like to know, the people that have been in these facilities, like what's the after story, not like the story that got them into the facility, the story that helped them get out, because it's ultimately not a long-term solution, right? Yeah. Are they going to live there forever, or are they they can live there for 2 years?
There's a percentage of those people that want to live like that. Remember, we talked about that. That's the lifestyle they're choosing.
The nomad kind of lifestyle.
They should not be able to impact everybody else's life that is not choosing that lifestyle. Well, so if I want to go downtown and be safe, I shouldn't have to worry that there's somebody down there that might be on drugs or alcohol.
It's become a safety issue.
Right.
Yeah.
But the city went way too far in one direction by saying, "Hey, you guys camp wherever you want." Yeah. That was ridiculous.
Well, that was an idiot decision.
And the public spoke out against that, and they turned that around. To some degree, there's still homeless people camping downtown, but I'll wrap it up with this: if we're spending $80 million a year, roughly, in the city of Austin on homelessness, the citizens need to hold that money accountable. They need to hold these politicians accountable to actually do something with that money that helps.
A line by line accountability.
It shouldn't be 15 employees making $120,000 a year, writing up programs and policies and things that don't help at all. That money should be spent helping the people that are on the street.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So
good. Here, let me help you off your soapbox.
Yes, please. Yeah. I'm old now. I don't want to fall off that soapbox. Leslie Rhode, I cannot wait to talk to her. She has got a tremendous background in journalism.
She really does, and it's something I think that you and I have a lot to learn. You know, doing this podcast, we have learned so much.
Yes, from our guests and also just about how to do a podcast in general. So, well, let's take a little break and get Leslie in here.
Great.
This show is brought to you in part by the Mallet Integrity Team, serving Dripping Springs, Austin, and the surrounding areas of Central Texas since 2004. When you need the best real estate advice and service, give them a call at 512-829-2062 or email them at malletintegrityteam.com. And now here's Steve and Michelle.
Welcome, Leslie Rhode. We've already screwed your name up at the beginning, so sorry about that. I'm going to blame it on Steve.
Welcome,
People do that.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're glad you're here.
I have to say, I am so nervous. I have been nervous all week. Have I not been?
You have been.
I really have.
And you've been in your own head.
I know. I can't
And
get out. I have
coach you
Leslie
out
in my
of it.
head.
You get to ask the questions, though.
No, I don't know who's going to be interviewing who, though. That's going to be...
The tables might be turned.
That's right.
Leslie, how'd you end up in Austin and Dripping Springs?
You know, I came to Austin back a long time ago, I think in 96, for a job at KXAN.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I started and worked in journalism there for about 7 years or so. Married my husband at the beginning of that time. Moved to Washington, D.C. for a few years and worked up there, and then had a chance to come back to Austin with my husband's work and went right back to the very same position at KXAN that I had
you did two stints
previously.
there.
Yeah,
Wow.
I did two stints. First time I was Leslie Cook. See, that was easier. That's an easier one. And then when I came back, I was Leslie Rhode. So I was one person.
Was it Cook with an E?
No.
Oh, it was like Cookie.
No Cookie. But that was my nickname in junior high school.
That's a great one.
Well, there you go. Now we're gonna use that later.
Did you when you moved back the second time or came the second time? Did you move right to Dripping Springs?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. I lived in South Austin previously in the first stint, but then got smart and thought I got to get out
That's
this
what we
way.
did too.
Yeah.
And we came this
So
direction.
about what year would that have been?
2005.
Wow, you've seen some big changes out
I
here then.
have.
Yeah.
I've seen big changes.
Yeah, some for the better, some for the worse.
Both.
Yeah. What do you think are the better changes?
I think we have even a more diverse population out here in Dripping, which I think is a good thing for a place to raise kids
I agree
in,
with
and you know, just culture and business and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Differing opinions.
Yeah, I agree with all that. It was a little,
I called it Hatfield and McCoy.
That's
how I called it when we first moved out
Yeah.
here. And
Yeah.
it was like the Great 12 Divide. It was like the new drip and the old drip. So it was the Hatfield and McCoys, and then you had the Belterra High Point.
And the
people.
old drip was like been here 200 years old drip kind of thing. Yeah. But
And there's something lovely about that. You know,
there is, yeah. Not when some of them are, shut the gates now. There's a certain number of people here, and now we don't want any more. It's like everybody should be able to enjoy it.
I did say earlier, though, that I think everybody moving here should take Texas history.
I actually think that's a great idea.
we could offer it online or something.
It would be mandatory. Yeah. If you're before you meet with your realtor to buy your house, you got to show them your
table.
Texas history certificate. Yeah.
Your license.
Yeah.
You might need a discount somewhere in there for that.
Yeah.
So your girls are at Dripping Springs High School?
All right. I have a senior girl and I have a freshman boy.
Oh, your boy,
My
girl and
14-year-old
boy.
is
That's
a
right.
yeah.
Boy.
Yeah. Senior, getting ready to flee the nest.
First time for me and for her. And it's pretty scary.
It is scary.
I tell my friends it's like a slow breakup. It's painful sometimes and lovely at other times. You know what I mean, Michelle?
I don't know if you just saw my phone go off, but that's Kendall calling me. Probably that's one of 7 calls that'll happen.
If you don't answer. She seems to know when we're recording a podcast.
She doesn't care.
Yeah.
She does not care.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you got to be ready at any time, Mom.
That's right. Yeah.
You do.
Anytime.
I'm with crisis management.
She's your top priority.
Right.
Leslie, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a small town in Arkansas. Russellville, Arkansas. Went to high school there and actually ended up graduating from college at a small school there, Arkansas
really?
Tech University.
Did you or did you major in journalism?
No, I majored in elementary education.
Oh,
I
wow.
taught 4th grade. A lot of people don't know that about me, just for a year. But it was
That's a big jump.
well, it is a big jump, but I guess if you can get that. So I love storytelling. I've always been a storyteller. And I think it was sort of similar. Like when I was standing up in front of the room in my classroom of 4th graders, that was my favorite age. I was telling stories, right? I was teaching, I was telling stories. That's the way you connect with people. And then when I started journalism, I was telling stories. In a lot of ways, when I was on the anchor desk, I was telling stories, and we had to do it on a 4th or 5th grade level half the time. Still. So there you go. There's your connection.
Oh, that says a lot about the average viewer.
Well,
It's true though. Yeah, it's true. A lot of this stuff you got to really break down.
Right.
You can't get too complex.
I have to, even saying it right now, Arkansas, phonetically, I have to stop and think about how to say it. And I don't know if it's because of my dyslexic brain, but I always want to say Arkansas.
well, remind me where you're from.
I'm down in the valley, Rio Grande
Okay,
Valley.
that's what I thought.
So
We're cousins. We're right next door.
Yeah, I have more of a little Hispanic dialect than I do
Right.
Texan dialect. Mine's more South Texas, but
Yeah.
it's not Arkansas. It's Arkansas.
I still think that in my head, even though I don't say it like that out loud. So 4th grade to broadcast journalist.
Yeah, what was that jump?
How does somebody make that leap?
I think I'd always wanted to be a journalist, and my parents were both teachers. I knew I needed a good job and thought, I'll be a teacher. Because I didn't want to take just one subject in college. And when you majored in elementary education, you got to take a lot of different subjects, right? And I think that's what I loved about journalism. And after I got out and I taught 1 year, I decided I wasn't married yet. I didn't have any responsibility. I'm like, I'm going to go try this journalism thing. So I went back to school and got my master's in communications with an emphasis on radio, television journalism.
Oh, wow.
So you knew you wanted to be on air.
I did.
Right?
I thought I did. Of course, everybody will tell you then, there's not many jobs for on air.
That was my thought.
More jobs are behind the scenes. And I was like, I'm cool with that. I'm good. I'll give it a shot.
What I want to know is, how was that first day when you were behind the camera? You talk about the nerves that I'm having.
And I want to, what is the first day?
Yeah, what is
They don't just put you up there talking about the nightly news. What's the first day?
I'd love you to guess what I did first. I was in a small town, Jonesboro, Arkansas, market like number 276.
You probably were like
This is a TV
the
station.
new opening of the Piggly Wiggly or something. It was like
probably. Actually, no. Well, I should say I was in radio first, but I was in radio sales, and I was terrible at it. But I had to have a job, right? So the local television station there in Jonesboro, where I had gone to grad school, I worked in the radio and tried that for a while, and I kept sending what was then reels, right? Big tapes to the TV station. And I applied 3 times before I got a job. And I got a job because when the sports job came up, I decided I know nothing about sports, but I'll read one sports story on camera and then I'll put all my new stuff afterwards. And lo and behold, that's what happened. I didn't get the sports job, but I got the next job that came open in news. And with that, I had to be a weather person.
Oh.
So that was my first big chance. I had to do weekend weather, and it was fun, but I knew news was going to be my long-term goal.
So it was more about the Vanna White pointing at the map.
Going to get some rain over here and some sun over here.
And you have to remember, I was working in, at that time I was working in in Jonesboro and then Fort Smith, two cities in Arkansas. And we were right there in the middle of Tornado Alley.
Oh, yeah.
So I spent lots of nights up at the station, just watching the storms come through from Oklahoma
and giving like ongoing reports about what was happening.
So that trained me.
So what year was that? Because would that have been before? That would have been before the internet, where people could get and before cell phones, where you could watch the radar.
Yes.
So that was where people were going to find out what was going on with the weather. That was the only place to find out.
Right, and there was a
wasn't
big
that long
responsibility.
ago. Yeah, you think it? Well, I mean,
Back
yeah,
in
it
the
was.
day.
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes to one of the questions I had for you is, part of being a good journalist, a good broadcast journalist, is having your audience trust you. How do you build that trust with them?
Loaded question. Gosh. Well, first of all, time. You have to have time. I remember people telling me in the business early on, 5 years. Give it 5 years. Try to stay. But nobody stays that long, hardly anymore. But time and just constant effort, I think. One of my news directors described it as one of the, and I'm trying to remember exactly how he would, but it like a statue, say a big piece of stone, and you're chipping away at the stone, just generally, slowly. And every day you keep trying to carve something that is beautiful and perfect and solid, just like that stone, right? And so every day the cuts have to be just right. And if you do mess up, go back and say you messed up and tell people you're sorry for it and keep going. And when I say mess up, like maybe you get a little fact wrong or something that's not right. But
you own up to it.
Yeah, you own up to it. You make a correction and you go on and you don't try to cover your tracks like so many people do today.
We know that most people that listen to this podcast know that I just make things up, just in general. I make words up.
But nobody holds it against you, Michelle.
Because I know I'm just
part of the charm
I'm not a liar.
of the show.
I'm just an idiot.
No, stop.
Well, and you have to, I think you spend a lot of time looking at your facts and your sources. And as an anchor, you're sort of that last window or that last gatekeeper, right? Because reporters sometimes will write stories for you and someone else may be writing, but you've got to be in there reading and writing and asking questions and asking for sources and things too, because if you just read what they give you, you never know.
Well, that was actually one of my biggest questions. Have you ever had somebody present you a story when you were the news anchor and you went, ooh, I'm not comfortable with this?
Yes.
For whatever reason. And if there was a reason, what was it?
I'll have some different answers, but I'll pick one. I was working as an anchor and reporter in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. I had a situation come up where I had a story and I had done it. It wasn't a hugely controversial story, but one of the sources in the story happened to be one of our customers, commercial. He was a client. He was an advertiser, right?
Bought ad. Okay, bought ads.
It just totally. But he was necessary to the story. Oh, yeah. And in the end of the day, this was a locally owned station. I had the owner of the station show up, which was very rare, and asked me, come in here. I want to watch that story with you.
Like, oh.
Ooh.
And in the end, it ended up okay, but it was not well received. Not only by me, but some of my bosses as well.
Well, you're being held accountable to something that you're just reporting the story.
Yeah, and it was just just his presence saying, and I'm hoping he's not listening.
Yeah.
But I want to check that to make sure you did our advertiser right.
Ooh.
And he didn't use those words.
Yeah.
But that's the feeling.
Was this a story you wrote and reported on?
Yes.
So you felt like it was important enough for the public to know. That goes back to the trust. It was important enough for the public to know that, even though you knew you were going to take some flack for it. So that's the opposite side of what I was talking about. That's that, and I love that. What about a story that's plopped down in front of you that you go, I cannot report on that. Yeah, Have you ever had that happen? I cannot read that story.
That you did not do the
maybe
research,
give it to your co-anchor or something.
Well, or you just say no. I have some examples of the first thing that comes to my head is covering a story that is tragic and someone was killed, shot, somehow it was bad. And a boss, person in charge, told me, go over to the family's house, knock on the door and get reaction. And that's often done. But this was just go over there and knock on the door and get reaction.
Oh, that's icky.
And I remember telling my photographer who was driving the car at the time, I said, we're going to tell him we went by the house. We didn't get anything. And when we got there, he stopped and I go, no, we're not stopping. We're just going by the house, because I could not always make myself do that. Now, in some cases, if you do it right and you approach victims in a nice way, they want to talk about loved ones or bad things. They want to talk about that. And so you'd have to be just real careful about the way you approach people. But I wouldn't just go and invade privacy like that.
Is is it the producer that's told you to do
News
that?
director.
The news director. Was he wanting you to film you knocking on the door and them opening it up and you like blindsiding them?
He would
or
I'd probably ask first, but he would
Yeah.
take that. I mean, that's the way it works sometimes.
Yeah, I would have had a hard time with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's-
after all these years of you being a reporter, what story still just lives rent-free in your head?
I have lots, Michelle. That's hard.
tell us a couple.
Oh my gosh. And I should be ready for that question, right? It's only been 20 something years. Okay. I got to interview President George W. Bush at the White House the week before he came back to Texas.
Oh,
And that was very meaningful. Now, I had been in Washington working as a local reporter there before coming back to Austin. But when I came back to Austin, the news director said, okay, can you get me an interview with President Bush before he came back? Because I came back before, right? 2005. And it worked out. We worked on it for a long time. But that has to be memorable.
oh, that's
Oh,
a
of
career
course,
highlight
yeah.
as well.
I mean, in the White House sitting there, and he had brought several, or his people had brought several Texas reporters up to Washington from different markets just to kind of talk about what he missed about Texas, what he was looking forward to coming back to, and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was huge, probably the biggest highlight of my career.
Did you get to meet Laura?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
But remember, see, I was working here when he was governor.
Oh, okay.
So I had covered him
Yeah.
Okay,
previously
yeah.
and Mrs. Bush as
Yeah.
well.
But you're sitting in the White House.
Yeah.
You know,
With
and
White House M&Ms. They had M&Ms with little presidential seals on them.
You're
and they
kidding.
would offer you them. Yeah, when we got that was a highlight.
I'm
And
doing
you didn't
that.
bring those with you? Because I know you got to pack it at home,
Yeah,
stash somewhere.
did you steal anything at the White House? Did you take a napkin
M&Ms.
or
And some towels from the bathroom.
towels from the bathroom, an ashtray?
That's got to be a huge highlight in your career. Actually, we should go back and watch that interview. It's got to be available online somewhere.
Somewhere maybe.
Yeah.
It was after the internet. So
Do you have any superstitions or anything quirky things that you do prior to getting ready to an interview?
well, I do my research, right? And I practice. I really plan my questions well, I think. But then when I go to an interview, or anytime I would even just do a live shot or go on the set, I try to have a place like through the doorway, like when I walk through this door right here to your studio, where I leave all the planning behind. And I literally envision, now focus on the content, focus on the story, focus on the, and just let it flow. I don't know if if that's
Well,
the
yeah,
right kind
that is getting in the right.
I guess I'm real visual because I feel like I need to stop. So every time I'd enter the studio at KXAN or other places, I would be right when I walked through the door, mostly because there was so much emphasis put on looking right. Your hair had to be right, and this had to be right, and this and all. And so at some point I was like, I cannot be thinking about that when I'm out here telling stories. Like I have to focus on the content. So when I'd walk through the door, I'd think, whatever hair is looking like right now, this is it.
Yep.
I'm focused on the story.
You went to the next step, which is creating good content.
Mm-hmm.
It is funny that you say that about appearance-wise when it should be based on what the story is and what the news of the day is, and not necessarily about how an anchor's hair looks. Or I remember I was friends with Terry Gruca, and she was saying something about like she would wear something and she'd get email about what she's wearing.
Like negative emails?
Negative email, or you shouldn't wear, your button was too far down below, or whatever personal life, something was going on in her personal life, people would put their 2 cents, and I would not react. People.
Did you get people commenting, sending you emails?
Oh,
or-
yes. And no one ever emails you something nice. Oh, I love that
That's
jacket.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's always. And your bosses, too. I mean, they're image consultants that are paid for a reason, right? And they come in and every few years and they would tell you what to fix. And I'm not saying it's all bad, because I learned a lot from all of that stuff. And I use it in some of my training today when I work with other people about how to interview and talk, be involved in the media or social media. But I remember one time I got an email from my boss, from the owner, that had said, "That shirt is frumpy."
Yeah.
Like, frumpy.
I have conversations
That's a
with
complex
Steve.
word.
Every time I hear that word, I go back to that moment now, frumpy.
It's a
And I'm like,
complex word.
how can I be frumpy when I was only like 30?
I judge Steve on the clothes that he wears on Tuesdays. Like I will.
Oh, she judges me every day on what I wear.
I do not.
You do.
Yesterday, I only sang the Mr. Rogers song because your shoes were.
They're Tom's. Tom's cannot be Mr. Rogers shoes. Jeez. Leslie, a lot of the movies depict the newsroom as this cutthroat, everybody's out to make their way and everybody else be damned. Is there some truth to that?
Sure.
Yes. And next question.
Sure.
Yes.
Did you always feel like you had a target on your back?
Sometimes, but I'll tell you, most of all, in all of the newsrooms I've worked in, it was a memorable experience and a fantastic family, especially when I was younger and just starting out. I mean, those people, we worked all the time. And anytime there was breaking news, we were in. And so you had to bond with those people. And then when I went to Washington, that's when I had my kids. I had kids. Other reporters were having kids. And we traded clothes and hand-me-downs. And you become this family outside of just the newsroom. But I will say there's some times, I remember when I first moved to Washington, D.C., which is a different market than Austin. But I was told at the very beginning who covered what beats and to basically stay off the beat.
It's their it's like a little gang, little news gang.
And mean girls. But over time they became my friends.
Yeah.
So.
But eventually you had to go into one of their spots. How did that go? Because they're your friends to a certain point, right?
Right, to a certain point. Well, in that job, I kind of found my own lane that didn't cross over anybody else's.
Oh, that's good.
I think there's a science to that as well. But yeah.
But they were all vying to be the anchor, right?
Well,
is that the top spot in the newsroom?
I think I think most people would agree with that, but not everyone wants to be an anchor. Some people do. And even as an anchor, I enjoyed going out into the community. If you were behind the desk for every night, week after week after week, there was no connection there.
Yeah, you lose touch
to the
with
people
your audience.
that you, yeah. So, I mean, and it's funny, when I left KXAN years ago, I remember telling a friend, I'm actually doing the things more now than I used to report on all the time, because I have the time to go do the things that I used to talk about.
So why'd you quit? Why'd you leave?
Those two little munchkins.
Oh yeah. It was time.
Yeah. My youngest had just started elementary school. And so if you can imagine, I dropped them off over here at Dripping Springs Elementary, both of them, in the morning, like at 7:30, 7:15. And then I would go home, do my normal errands, whatever, go into work. I'd get home at like 11. They'd already be in bed.
Oh,
and then I'd see them the next morning.
That's
and just
rough.
do it all over again.
Yeah. And after, a little bit of time in that, I loved what I did. I still love it.
You're missing all the school parties and you're missing
You never get that back.
You never do. And so here I
do.
am so many years later, and I've got one about to graduate. I've got one a freshman, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do when they're gone? I don't know. I'm probably not going to do that again. But it is.
Steve may be looking for a new host.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mallet and Leslie.
Dripping Springs. You know why she said that, Leslie? Because she thinks she's going to win the lottery.
Oh, yeah.
This lottery that was messed up?
I sent a resignation letter last night to all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know yet. I haven't checked my numbers, so you just never know.
Well, it wasn't announced yet, right?
I thought it was just a little while ago. Just a little
Okay.
while ago. So we don't know.
But so I'm going to say it on air. She told me she's giving me half, so I'm just going to hold her to
Oh,
that.
okay.
So whatever it is.
That's a deal.
Of the broken fan underneath my desk. That is what I'm giving you. Leslie, I have a question when you're talking about kind of gang wars in the news world. Uh-huh. Do you feel, I know that your Christian faith is very important to you and you kind of lead by that. Do you feel it's hard or other journalists hard to be a Christian or a public Christian in such an agnostic media world right now?
I don't think it's hard because I think we're called to be wherever we are. I mean, right? I think it is. Mm-hmm. I think we have to be. I mean, those are mission fields in a lot of ways. So I considered it that, and I don't think I was ever attacked or talked badly about, or I don't think I ever faced that.
Do you think it's different now?
I was going to say, I bet it's different now.
As compared
perception.
to...
My perception is that it's different now. being a public Christian, being publicly declaring your faith and standing on your morals and your grounds. And
well, yeah. I mean, I think if I really look at it, I have been told before from a news department, we don't do church. Okay, we don't do church. In other words, don't talk to me about a story that has to do with the church, because they have to have that line. You know,
unless there's some salacious,
right?
Yeah,
but I don't think it. I guess I was never personally put in a position where I was called out for anything. And you have to remember, I've done this a long time. So back in the day when I first started in a small town in Arkansas, it was well received.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Your audience, it was a very different, and I remember doing a series of stories called, I think I called it Power in the Pulpit, because we had a couple of local pastors who were running for office, and we did these, how do you lead like that? But back to your question, I do think probably it is a little difficult to be that in today's world, but I don't sense that being a local journalist.
And the benefit that Steve and I have is that we're an opinion-based podcast, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes our opinions are very well received, and sometimes we can kind of tell from what numbers or whatever, or just like conversations. This whole podcast is kind of geared around conversations with our community, right? And getting to know people and who they are and why they are. But also in the sense, we did not really, I don't think, realize that they're really getting to know us too.
Oh, sure.
And it's hard to try to be as Switzerland as we think we can be. And Steve and I were just having this conversation. Anybody that kind of knows Steve or I personally, they know where we stand, either kind of politically, religiously, just kind of getting.
But we're also aware that people tune in just to hear
Dripping Springs. They want to hear about you.
Dripping Springs, but it's also, I think people want to feel good, which
they don't want to be preached to.
That brings me to what this new thing you're doing, ATX Good News.
Yes.
What is that? Tell us about that.
ATX Good News is, we like to call it a movement.
Yeah.
Okay. We're a social media movement actually right now. That's all we're doing. My friend Judy Maggio and I, long time, well-respected anchor
from
in this
KVU.
market. Yes. Mm-hmm. She was at KVU for a number of years, and KI as well later on. Oh. She started here and finished her career here in that. I mean, she's been here so long. We're best of buddies. And at the beginning of COVID on through, we decided, well, actually way back after we both left television news, we didn't know each other. We met at it was a party that was of media people, and we had both just left news, and we became fast friends. We always said how we were competition, and we really didn't like each other. We would say out, let's do lunch sometime, and we go, forget that, I'm not doing that, walk away. But when we finally got to know each other, we were fast friends. Then fast forward to a couple years later, we just started having these conversations about, I miss storytelling. I miss storytelling in the way of those inspiring stories that make people walk away feeling good and maybe want to take some action in their life. So I guess over time we just talked about it more. And then when COVID hit, this past January, we just decided we're just going to do this. We're just going to put it out there for people. There's stories that share good news, and most of it focuses on people doing good things, groups doing wonderful things to change their communities. Sometimes hard news stories that people are stepping in and trying to solve the problem instead of just telling me about the problem. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We want to tell people about what people are doing to solve it, and that's called solutions journalism.
Well, I love that.
I saw that one of the stories you just reported on was about the broken spoke, and I was listening to Todd Jeffries the other day, and they were debating about making it historical. What did they call it? Historical landmark? And what a cool story, the history about that. And you didn't mention once about how, if it's a historical landmark, can they update the bathrooms in there?
No, I didn't. Actually, Judy did that story, so I'll give her the props for that.
Please tell Judy they need to update those bathrooms. We've talked about that before.
Yeah, the curtains.
Yeah, maybe. If it's historical, I'm not sure that they have to do that.
I don't know if Texas shower curtains are part of the historical committee.
I think so.
How are you spreading the word about ATX Good News?
Well, through podcasts like yours.
Yeah,
That's what I'm doing.
Look at that.
I love getting out and talking about it. We've been on a couple of local news programs. And when we speak and do things in the community for both of our businesses, we get asked about it. And we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube right now. We do live streaming off and on. We used to do a regular rhythm of every Friday when we started. And then it just became like, over the summer, we had things going on. We had places to go just like everybody else. So it's a creative project. It's not our main businesses, but we just find a lot of fulfillment in it. And I personally find fulfillment in being able to finally tell the good parts about what's going on in the community, because for years and years and years, I can't tell you how many times I pitch things to my bosses about, even if we have a tough story that's going on, there's somebody doing something good in the middle of all of it. Can we not find that? Can we not tell that as well to balance it out? Instead of just put what we used to call a kicker at the end of the show, look at the squirrel on the skateboard or whatever, instead of that, just really be able to focus every once in a while on what's good. And I think, honestly, that's one of my callings, is to make sure that people know the good. And during COVID, we've heard all this stuff about mental health. And I just said, research will tell you that we are what we think about too. Yeah. Not just what we eat, right?
It's media gaslighting. It's kind of, I've said that in the past too. And now what you're doing is you're putting forth that good energy, that good news that
your journey is the same as ours. We were, and it was October last year, we were sitting around and we were talking about how negative, like some of the
neighbors
Facebook
page,
groups, on Facebook are.
Right.
And how people attack each other and they don't know a single thing about that other person. And and Michelle and I said, if you get to know that person more than just their name on Facebook and that one sentence that they said, you're much less likely to attack them and maybe even become friends with them. You know, like you were talking about Judy, you guys were competitors, but once you got to know each other, you became best friends.
Sure. And we have differing opinions.
Of course,
on things, from politics to, we do, but we are just
that makes good relationships.
Because you know what, we have a common thread, a common goal, and I think that's one of the things that makes relationships matter, right?
I love that. Yeah, and talking about competitors, some of my best friends are people that I competed with in sporting events over the years. And
what sports did you play?
Oh, mostly triathlon, some running and swimming, but
nothing that required muscles.
But some of those people that once I wasn't competing with them, I would build these great friendships with them because I enjoyed that competition. And without them, the competition wasn't as much fun.
Wasn't as much fun. And when you think about it, they're the only ones who can probably relate to most of your experiences.
Right.
That's just what Judy was. But we used to laugh about it. It was like, now our husbands love that we're friends because we don't have to come home anymore and give them our work stories.
Yeah.
Because we can tell it to each other, you know?
But also competitors bring out the best in you.
Oh, you're right.
And I bet you guys are both, you're both pushing each other higher.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
Steve, you're very competitive. You are. But I think it makes you a better realtor. I think it makes you a better athlete.
I love that feeling of competition. Yeah. To, striving to be a little bit better. I love that. And that you were on your bio, crisis communication consulting. That's intriguing to me. What is that?
Well, crisis is not all of my work, right? Yeah. So most of my work is I just like to say, I like to teach people to tell their stories well, whether it be one person trying to speak in front of an interview or on camera somewhere, or someone doing some social media work, or taking a company, a business, a nonprofit, and looking at all of the stuff that they have going on and be able to kind of help them hone down on what that main message to connect emotionally to their audience is. Well, that's what I did in broadcast news, right? For years, because you'd go out and get all this information and all this story, and then you have to come back and they say, I have a minute 15. That's what you have to do. So that's sort of what I do now. But crisis communications consulting comes up. I really don't do a lot of go in and handle your crisis for you, although I get asked to do that a lot. I like to help people set up what the plans would be if something happens. And you mentioned these Facebook groups. Most of the time it's happening there now.
Oh,
so what do you do
to
get ready for, there are other crises, right? People, exploiting things or messing up, and then but so much of it is coming from social media.
Is that somebody that's moderating that takes removes posts and somebody gets mad and threatens a lawsuit.
Some rogue employee that does
gotcha.
something and posts something somewhere. And you know how it is. You screen grab it once and it's yours.
Yeah.
And then you can put it everywhere.
Yeah.
We could use her when we're trying to talk to our real estate clients about lowering their prices.
That is a crisis.
That's a crisis. Sad
help
crisis.
us figure that out.
Some planning. Not my favorite part of my work. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe the good news part just balances
That's
that
got to
out.
be really stressful when you walk into a crisis situation and try and help somebody plan for that.
Well, and a lot of times what it is they call me to get ready for the news media to come after them in a crisis. So I help them know really what's going on behind the scenes, what kind of questions to expect. We walk through, do you really need to respond to the news media now? Or maybe you just you need to put a statement out there. What kind of statement do you need? All those fun, exciting things.
Because you've been in the trenches and know how that business
You
works.
put your reporter hat on and try to act like, okay, what would I do?
Yeah.
Would I ask you this? Would I really, that type of
So you're not an Olivia Pope, but you're a...
You did it again, Michelle. I don't know who that is. You can tell me later.
Okay, I'll fill you in.
Leslie, do you think that there's sort of a credibility crisis in media and journalism right now? It's presented that way on social media. Do you think that it's actually a reality?
This is a thought, right? Now you have to understand I still have a hard time with these because I try not to go one way or the other. But I'll give you my opinion.
Okay.
I think there is. I think there is a crisis, and I think most of it's on the national level. I think most people see it and they want to believe whatever they want to believe, and they watch whatever they want to watch. Because just like I was mentioning in ATX Good News, you want to really feel better about stories and people in your life, you got to make sure you're finding those stories. If you want to believe a certain way about politics, you're going to watch one or read one type of news outlet for that. But I think on the local level, I'm going to raise my local friends up a little bit, because I do think local journalism is where true journalism is really still going on. It's not to say that there are not problems there, but there are day-to-day things being covered and stories being told that can change communities. And so I really think we need to, if you want to save journalism, whatever, is we need to put more emphasis on local journalism and nonprofit journalism that's out there
Independent.
too.
Yeah.
Telling these stories.
Well, because media nowadays is so profit driven.
Right.
Everything is about, like what you
It's
were
all
saying.
about clicks.
The story that you were told previously about your advertisers, and you've got to keep your advertisers happy. You got to keep, it's all money, 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 money.
Well, the thing that drives me nuts is you read a headline and you'll go, wow, that doesn't sound right. And then you read the article.
Clickbait.
And yeah, it is clickbait, because the article doesn't describe what the headline says. It actually sometimes contradicts what the headline is. That drives me
where
crazy.
it says link in bio. I'm like, no, I don't want to click on something else.
It can happen even locally, that too.
Yes.
I mean, I know how it happens, and I know why things happen. Sometimes what used to drive me crazy in that regard is that a producer would send me out and say, here's the story. It's going to be great. This is the angle, blah, 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 blah. And I'd get out there and I was like, that's not really the story. I found this story. I think this is a better story. They're like, no, we want that story. So there is some kind of control that goes on like that all the time. But I just still think we need to, I think there are more and I can say this because I worked in DC and I worked around some network people too, that there are local journalists that still got into it to try to better the community. Maybe fewer than used to be. Like, that's one of the reasons I got into journalism. I thought it was a service to the community. I never had a dream of being a national person. But there are a few out there that are still doing that.
Do you think that no matter how boring the person is, or what the public would perceive as a boring story, you think everybody has a story to tell? And how do you draw that out of them?
We need to go to lunch sometime.
Yes,
Michelle.
I would love that.
I love this. I think everybody has a story to tell. And that's what fascinates me with what I still do. And that is try to help people pull those stories out. When I was little, I used to read biographies a lot. I don't know. And I think it was that reason. You know, when you think back on things, you go, oh, that's why I used to do that. I think it's fascinating to really get to know a person, as you were talking about, Steve, and really what makes that person get up every day and do what he or she does. And that is why a lot of times the interviews that I remember in my career really aren't the interviews so much as I mentioned the presidential interview. I remembered that experience. I didn't remember the answers and the content as much, but I do remember interviews about people who, I remember a man dying of cancer, and I was asking him the blessings in his life and him telling me lessons about how he's so much more lucky than I was because he got to see life differently. And talking to a mother whose son had been shot at a high school, she wanted to tell me all about that kid. And I remember phrases she told me about, because it was about that person's story, right? Back to that. It's about the importance and the value that we put on a human being.
It really, I love that. I absolutely love it. Have said over and over again, you sit down on an airplane and somebody sits down next to you, and if you have an open, frank conversation with them for the 2 hours that you're in the air, you will learn a fascinating story. Yeah. If they're open with you, everybody has one. There's a story in there somewhere. You just got to get to it.
Steve says I have a knack for people telling me within the first 30 minutes.
Leslie, she does. They're
deep, dark secrets. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Maybe
people come to me all the time and they go, "You can't tell anybody," and they'll tell me whatever they're going to say, and I'm in my back of my mind, I'm thinking, "Well, Michelle already told me that a week ago because you told me." So.
You told her.
There's a gift there. Yeah. I do think there's a gift there. I think some people are. There's an aura or something that you have, I would guess, that makes people want to, be more vulnerable with you. Maybe.
I would hope so. I think that's what I bring to the table at this podcast, is that mine is more of the emotional side. I want to know more about the emotional aspect of your story. And Steve is more about the analytical.
I like to learn. I've learned a lot from you, Leslie, but I like to learn about the talents and skills that people have.
And I get drawn to the feelings, and I get sucked on to that. Like, what drives you to get up every day? Your answer about why you left was because of your children, right? Your son and your daughter. And that really, as a mom, that speaks to me. And, you talking about almost being an empty nester, and, with just one, and, on one hand, you're like, see ya. And the other hand's like, oh, stay back. Yeah. And I can relate to that. And I think that is what we're missing right now, and just on a national level. Yeah. It's so sensationalized, and
the personal ideas about people, personal thoughts people have.
I would agree.
But we got to get to something really important here. I want to know about tap dancing.
Okay. I do love to tap dance. So I grew up dancing, right? I got to give props to my daughter, though, because she's the dancer now, and she is a fantastic tap
Is she
dancer.
in High
Is she a tap
Steppers?
dancer?
No, she dances at Premier Dance Center.
Oh, okay.
Here, and she's on the company here, and so I get to kind of live through her and watching all of that unfold, and I will miss that for sure.
Yes.
But I danced growing up as well, and tap dancing was my thing. I mean, I had to do all the other types, but I just loved it. And
that's hilarious. Love it.
And I did take lessons at Premier here right before COVID, right to the beginning of COVID. And I found it it wasn't as easy as it used to be.
I bet not.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but Steve is also an accomplished dancer as well.
God, give me a break. I danced Friday night on the dance floor for the first time in 25 years, maybe.
25 years?
It's been a long time.
No, I tried to teach you one time how to two-step because you were going to Holly's.
Yeah.
And
forget
it.
We didn't do it. We didn't even try it.
No, you just forget it.
I have no beat. I don't have any of that.
You and Todd, my big toe says the same thing.
Yeah,
I love to dance.
Where you stepped on your toe.
What kind of dancing do you do, Michelle?
I love I play music in the office. I'm very connected to music, but I love to country dance. I love it, love it, love it.
Pretzel. What are the names of all?
Well, I just two-step. I like to waltz. I used to jitterbug, but now I'm older and my hips and my joints and everything else kind of hurt. And but yeah,
that's the way tap dancing was, because if you think about it, tap dancing, you have to control every little teeny muscle in your foot to make all the different sounds. And I put those tap shoes on for the first time a few years ago again, and it was like I was a stomper. Like I could not make any of the sounds.
Were you sore after that too?
Oh yeah, my ankles and everything.
I could imagine. Yeah.
But there's something about the rhythm that just draws me. Yes. Like when I listen to music, because I'm a huge music person too, and I listen, and I'm one of those people driving my cars just moving in there, and so there's something about the rhythm that I just can't sit still.
Not
when I hear it.
I'm afraid to move when the music's on because I never get it right.
We play music
look
roulette.
Like I'm having a stroke.
right? In the office, we play music
Yeah, we
roulette.
do.
We
We
figure
do.
out like, okay, Steve, who sings this song?
Yeah.
But you sing also in your church choir.
I do.
Yes.
I sing a little bit in the worship band now. I used to sing in the choir, and then COVID, and then all this, and now
Are there choirs nowadays? Or it's all worship? Yeah.
Very few, right?
I grew up Baptist. There's always a choir.
There's always a choir. I'm in a small worship band at my church, and I love it. I've enjoyed learning how to sing harmony for my friend Logan, who is fantastic, and he plays the guitar. I don't play any other instruments, though. I took piano growing up, but my voice was my instrument growing up, so I enjoy it. It has been fun to get up there and worship in front of people. Like, that was very different. I mean, I only started this about a year ago, so it's a brand new thing for me. I always sang growing up, and I did the choir thing in school, and then I even did a pageant and did the singing and all that stuff. But worshiping and talk about vulnerability,
Something very personal to you.
very personal, and learning the songs and getting learning it in your head, right? But then getting out of it and onto that your front, right, Michelle? That emotional level has been fun. It's been a good experience. But I think at my age, we need to keep trying to learn new things, don't we?
Well, I grew up, in the Baptist church, and my preacher, my brother, whatever we called him, Brother Ken, he would say, we're not playing volleyball with God here. Like we had this invisible line to not lift your hands. And then when I was at Riverbend and I, was youth minister there, it was like, oh, my hands, they're going up. Here they go.
I didn't know you were youth minister there.
I was in youth ministry for a long time. Bless this generation of children.
Talk about a calling. That's so needed, especially today.
Well, I think you have to be a little nuts, and that's pretty evident of who I am right now. So,
well,
That
bless
is
you
true.
for that. That's great.
Leslie, a couple more questions for you. What kind of advice do you have for us as neophyte podcasters?
that word just fascinates me.
I love that word.
Say it again,
Neophyte.
Oh, I thought you meant podcasters. I don't have a podcast. I mean, you're the
You do, though. You got
I have my own
Good
ATX Good
yeah.
News. And I do want to plug that real quick. It's ATX Good News on Facebook. Instagram is, it's ATX Good News now on Facebook, I think, but you'll find it under ATX Good News. And then on Instagram, it's just at ATX Good News.
We'll put a link on
Please do.
marketing.
I'd love to get some more followers.
Yes.
Because, and we can talk more about that in a little bit. But what did you ask me? Because I'm forgetting.
Neophyte.
Tips for us, yeah.
Tips for you.
What is a neophyte, Steve? I don't even know what
Somebody
that is.
that's new and inexperienced.
Why did you use that word?
I like that word. I'm trying to add some words to my
It
vocabulary.
sounds scientific,
It
doesn't
does.
Okay. Therefore, your differences. I love these and embrace these differences. I think I will say, keep telling stories. You're doing the right thing there.
Oh, good.
Because even when I get a corporate client or I've worked with people trying to get things passed on a ballot and everything else, if you can't tell a good story to connect emotionally to someone, they're not going to connect with you at all, no matter what you do. That's in my heart of heart. So I believe that.
I agree with that.
So keep telling good stories, and don't be afraid to let people get to know who you are. Like, take it from Michelle over here.
I'm an open book.
I think it's true, because that's one thing I do regret some of my career is I felt like, and I was told, we were hard news journalists, and especially here in Austin, we're told not the audience is very educated, right, and young and educated. They don't want to hear fluff. They don't want to get to know what you had for dinner. They don't want to know about. They just want to know the content. And for so long, I was just sticking to the content. And I feel like when I finally was able to start talking about who I truly was and what I enjoyed and what, just a little bit here and there, that's when people really got to know me.
It's funny because this is our 46th episode, and the people that come up to us and say things to us, they never say, hey, I really enjoyed that story you did about the Battle of Gonzales.
They always say, Speedo Steve.
Yeah, they say something like that. Yeah.
I said one time that we call him around the office Speedo Steve, and he goes, no, you don't. And then
that goes back to some of I'm a swimmer. So
okay.
it's not that I just go to the beach in a Speedo.
Not that he shows up at work in a Speedo, but I am equally as shocked when I run into a stranger. I was in an HOA meeting a couple of weeks ago in High Point, and I went and introduced myself to somebody, and he said, oh yeah, you're with that runner guy.
Yes,
You guys
I
have
remember.
that podcast. And I was like, oh, and I came back and I told Steve, I was like, somebody knew who we were.
And that's a good
Almost
feeling.
famous.
And after all these years, I still get the same thing. Somebody's, I saw somebody the other day. Oh, you're good news. And so there are some people that will
great.
see me still and say, hey, I really enjoy you on the morning show. I'll see you tomorrow. I mean, that was like 20 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they still think you're on TV, but that's what makes my heart happy is when
great.
they say, hey, you're that good news gal or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that's right. So I guess that'd be the other piece of advice. Keep going.
Oh,
Don't
we're not,
miss.
We're not going to stop.
You are. I mean, the consistency is important, and I'm preaching to the choir here, okay? Because with our efforts as well, the consistency is important. That's impressive. 46.
Yeah.
Every Tuesday.
I tell you
Oh, my
what, though,
goodness.
Leslie, I think a lot of weeks coming up to this point, this is what kept us sane. It was, we look forward to this. We enjoy it. It's like a break from that grind. We get in here and have fun.
It has sparked the creative juices in us as well that we didn't realize.
We didn't
that
know
had.
we needed that, right?
Yeah. And everything that we've learned, it's insane. And I thought, okay, I'm almost 52 years old. There's nothing else I can learn. I know everything. Yeah. But
it's
just
important.
like I'm still learning. And my 90-year-old grandmother was still trying to learn Spanish.
Oh my
all
goodness.
the time.
Yeah.
She was watching Telemundo, and I'm thinking, I need to be like my mom be. I need to keep going and keep learning and keep growing.
Well, it's
and-
like your brain's like any muscle. If you just stop using it, it's going to atrophy and it won't be strong. So you got to push yourself. Yeah, up to the day you die, you should be trying to learn something.
Is there sweating involved? Because
No,
I don't do
not
sweating.
with your brain. No, you could sit there like a bump on a log.
I'll give you kudos for the technology learning because that's one of my biggest challenges is learning. I mean, just live streaming took me weeks to figure out how to do. And then, of course, we didn't have a budget, so that's a whole nother story. But this setup you've got going here is fantastic.
You know what? Kudos to Scott Bennett over at KHOG FM. He's
Yes,
one
I
of
know
my really good friends. He's one of my best friends, and he has really been our mentor in
Yeah,
this
he's
and
been
helped
great.
us. And he really. It's nice to have somebody that wants you to succeed.
Oh, yeah.
And is encouraging you.
And our other really good mentor, YouTube, was.
Oh yeah, there you go, Mr. YouTube.
Mr. YouTube.
When I first told Michelle we were going to do a podcast,
thought he was
after
nuts.
this like 5-second silence, she said, okay. And I said, I don't know where we're going to start.
So it was your idea.
It was my idea.
But he leaves out the part, and I appreciate it. But it is true. It is true to the story that I went a little nuts. Like I went to the hypomanic, like OCD. Oh my gosh, when we have guests on, they're gonna have to sign releases, and they're gonna have to do this, and they're gonna have to do that. And I overthought every micromanaged aspect of it because that's how my brain works. I could fit it into this nice little box.
Right.
And Steve finally, I was like, I told Steve, I'm gonna have to quit. That's it. I'm quitting. I'm not working. I'm not working for you anymore. It was a bad couple of days. And then all of a sudden I cried in his office, and I was like, okay, I'm okay with this. Like I had to get through the OCD and the psycho-ness about it.
So that's a huge difference for us. One of my stories that helps me sort of focus on how to move my business forward. But in this podcast, there's this guy that wanted to ride his motorcycle from Texas to the southern tip of South America. And there was a guy that had done it, and he had written a book. And this guy, he made plans. He was what bike to get, what to pack, visas, blah, blah, blah. And he months and months of research. And he wrote this guy that wrote the book. He wrote him a letter, and he said, I need your advice, here, and asked him all these questions. And the guy wrote him back a single letter, a single sentence, and said, here's what you do. Leave tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
And that's my sort of point of view is I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there, but we're going to go.
That's a huge lesson for people to learn.
I just didn't like I didn't like the idea of putting myself out there so publicly and failing because there's so much yucky out there.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that whatever it was, I prayed about it. I thought about it. I talked to my husband about it, talked to my kids, and they thought I was stupid. And they're like,
well, then you knew you were doing the right thing.
Yeah, I was like, that's it. I'm going for it. But I really appreciate the fact that I ended up trusting the process, and that Steve trusted me to trust the process. And I think that, over our 8-year relationship, we broke down those barriers. There was one moment, I think, this was about 4 years ago or so, in his office, and I was like, do you understand I am not your competition? Like, I want you to succeed as much as you want you to succeed. And I think there was, I'll never forget this because it was a real turning point in our relationship, not only as employer and employee, but as our friendship. And it was like, oh my gosh, I really do have somebody in my corner. I want somebody to succeed. And that's kind of how I feel with this podcast. It's like,
it's been fun.
Yeah, we're elevating. I elevate him, me, and like I make fun of his shoes, and he makes fun of the words I make up. But
it's a partnership. But it's
right.
back to storytelling.
That's right.
It's the chapter changed
at
that
yeah,
point,
it
right?
did. It
and
really
now you're
did.
writing new ones. And I think we did the same thing. I'm very much like you in that regard, Michelle. We worked on a business plan and everything for like a year. And finally, this last January, you know how New Year kind of hits you and you end up thinking, I got to do something new. It just happened on the first week of January. We said, we don't have anything planned, but we're going to, and we sat in her living room and went live and just said, anybody out there?
Yeah.
that was us.
But you got to start somewhere. And now when I go back to and listen to episode 1, 2, or 3, it's like we have come so far.
And
it's been a fun journey.
I feel like I've gotten better. I've gotten better at interviewing people or researching people. It's like I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I literally was making it up as I went along. And I still got to make it up as I go along. But I'm knowing better. I'm doing better. And to watch him succeed, it's fun. You know, sometimes we say, oh, this is not a real estate show. Well, you know, the whole original premise of this was a marketing outreach for our real estate business, right? But it has become so much bigger than that. Yeah. And it has filled my heart. I have talked to people like you, Chuck, for instance.
To tears sometimes.
Oh,
it brings
absolutely.
Tears to her eyes.
Yeah, and it's just like it lives with me.
We could cry together.
Yeah.
We could cry together. I'm telling you right now, we could cry together.
I'll wait out in the hall.
But you know, I'll bring up another point and shut me up when you're ready, because as I said in the beginning, I'm usually in sound bites, and this has been really a blessing to be able to talk. But what you've also pegged is a very hyper-local audience. And I think that's really the future, too, of really healthy communities. Because I go past the audience part, right? And I think that's what's really good. Journalism is like that too. Yeah. I think at least I'm looking for more local schmocal content because I want to know what's going on in my community. And in the same way, Judy and I did this with ATX Good News, because there are a lot of good news spots on Instagram and it just showed us that everybody wanted that content, but nobody was focusing on what Bob was doing down the street or I went out to Kyle yesterday to a place called Teacher Reuse that I'd never heard of. And it's the best place for teachers to go. Businesses donate supplies and things and teachers go and pick out anything they want for free for their classroom.
Nice.
So cool.
Oh, that is cool.
Isn't that a cool story?
Yes.
Great.
So it's just like that probably wouldn't have gotten told somewhere else, but it's right here in my backyard, and it's a woman who wakes up every day. I cried interviewing her. I did, because she wakes up every day. She was a former teacher, and she said, you know, teachers don't need to be stressing about what they have in their classroom and what they don't. And she's just driven every day to do that. So when I meet someone like that in one of these stories, it inspires me to examine my life and go, what am I doing? You know, so in some ways, I mean, ATX Good News is sort of a service project in some ways to the community.
And people, you know, in the age of social media, people are, they worry about likes and clicks and comments, and you only have to change one person's life to make a huge impact in the world.
It's true.
You know, and there's plenty of opportunity out there. You just have to look for it.
We need to remind ourselves.
That's right.
I know, every day.
Yeah. Leslie, what do you think's next for you?
Well, empty nesting in a few years. I guess I've got 3.5 more years.
We need an empty nest Dripping Springs Mom Club. That's what we need. That's our.
Could I join early and learn?
Let's do it.
I need a mentor. That would be good. I don't know. I think I'm going to keep telling stories. I really do. I don't know what's next for ATX Good News. There's been some talk about some different things with it, but I'm going to keep telling stories. And in some ways, I want to start bringing my personal stories in there a little bit more. And you mentioned your faith. I think we all, I have a passion for helping people discover their story in God's story, because we all have a part to play in that. So there's a part of me on the non-business side of things too that would love to step into that world a little bit more in public speaking and things like that. If that makes any sense.
It does. No, I love that.
Your energy is infectious for sure. Not in a bad
Do I
way.
move my
not
hands
like
too much?
No, not like
Not like COVID.
Not like itchy. I'm not itching, but I'm really drawn to you. And I just, how have we not been friends? How have we lived here exactly
Coffee
the
next
same?
week.
Coffee next week.
Or we've
For
been
sure.
friends on Facebook for years.
I know we've been Facebook
Well,
friends.
there's the point, right?
Yeah.
You've been friends on Facebook, but now you really know each other, and there's a connection. So, well,
you can come too.
yeah, I'll probably just sit there and listen. I'll probably absorb it all. And if you start crying, I'm going to go get more coffee.
Crying is mandatory.
Oh no! Then I'm not showing up. Yeah.
Only if we make fun of his shoes too much, then he'll
Yeah,
cry.
that'll make me cry every time. Yeah. Well, Leslie, this was really fun. Thank you for coming in. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you for having me.
Totally. I'm totally blessed by your presence here and just the fact that you are in our community, in our little community, and that people get a little window into your world.
Well, thank you. And thank you for doing what you do.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank
That'll
you.
be $5 at the door.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Leslie Rhode.
This show is brought to you in part by the Mallet Integrity Team, serving Dripping Springs, Austin, and the surrounding areas of Central Texas since 2004. When you need the best real estate advice and service, give them a call at 512-829-2062 or email them at malletintegrityteam.com.
Thanks for listening.
We'd love your comments or feedback. Email us at malletandmichelle@gmail.com.
You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Please subscribe and leave us a review.
New episodes released every week on Tuesday.